Hello, chiropractors. Hello, slayers of subluxation. Hello, unleashers of the imprisoned impulse. I am Dr. Anthony Pellegrino from ChiroEdge, and welcome to another chiropractic research breakdown, where each week we break down the most relevant chiropractic science and philosophy to empower you with the ammo and certainty necessary to change your community from the inside out. Today, we're going to be going over 3 different articles I'm a big fan of. We're going to be talking about the stats behind SIDS, or sudden infant death syndrome. We're going to be looking at the chiropractic application to something like that, and why it's so important to not only get kids checked, but also prenatal care. We're going to be looking at evaluation of MRIs in Olympic athletes in the Rio de Janeiro 2016 Olympic Games, and the quality of health of the spine for those athletes, as well as we're going to be looking at dose response in cervicogenic headaches, aka how much chiropractic is too much chiropractic. Now, starting with SIDS, we're going to be looking at an article called Cardiovascular Autonomic Dysfunction in Sudden Infant Death Syndrome. This is from the journal Clinical Autonomic Research. Basically, what they were looking at is that, the things like the Back to Sleep campaign have really bring public health awareness, bring public health outreach has really changed the death rates of SIDS. Or since the 1990s, when this Back to Sleep campaign actually came out, the rates of deaths to SIDS have actually dropped by about 50%. Unfortunately, that drop has actually plateaued over the last years, to the point where they haven't seen any further improvement, which really makes them start to look at what else can be causing SIDS and what are the risk factors and what are the preventative factors, right? What should we avoid and what should we be doing to further improve SIDS? So what we begin to look at is actually what causes SIDS, right? The fact is that the sleep for children and sleep for adults is completely different. The sleep architecture, the way that their brain actually functions is totally different. If we look at quiet sleep and active sleep, adults have primarily quiet sleep, while infants have primarily active sleep. Now, the thing is that arousal is part of the actual brain function, the higher brain function that's necessary to actually wake us up from sleep. Basically, in so many infants, there is a survival type mechanism that comes from the brainstem, which sends impulses up to the cortex, to and subcortical areas of the brain, to basically say, hey, I'm hypoxic, my blood pressure's dropping, my heart rate's dropping, I need to wake up because something's wrong. What they've been finding is that the survival mechanism in children who have died from SIDS is actually impaired with. Now, this information comes from places like the brainstem. They say there's compelling evidence that impaired cardiovascular control with the concomitant failure to arouse from sleep are involved in the final events leading to SIDS. In individuals who are victims of SIDS, they found significant deficits in the brainstem and cerebellar function. 40% have had abnormality in serotonin in these areas of the brain. Well, basically, why is this important to us as chiropractors? Well, obviously, we know that due to birth trauma, one of the most commonly subluxated areas of the spine is the atlas, right? Just from being born, getting tugged out, whether it's natural, whether we give birth in a field, whether it's in a hospital, whether it's a C-section, whatever it is, we know that trauma can cause subluxation of the atlas, right? Due to the proximity between the atlas and the brainstem, which is what we all talk about in, our practices. The importance of the brainstem, the importance of the proximity between the atlas and the brainstem, and how it can literally choke off communication between the brain and the body. Those are words that we use in our practice, right? And I know a little bit more about the science behind that, but it just makes sense for people. Excuse me. When we look at all this, we basically know that, well, if there's going to be impaired brainstem function, it's going to be really important for us as chiropractors to allow each and every child to function 100% by analyzing for interference in the nervous system at especially the level of C1 and providing pinpoint specific adjustments to correct that. Okay. If we go and take this forward, we look at the research of people like Jay Holder with torque release technique and their look at the reward deficiency syndrome, which we've looked at with subluxation, how it relates to that, which impedes the release of serotonin, which there's a 40% deficit in children with SIDS, right? We can see furthermore how the application of chiropractic as a preventative factor is so important. Babies who are exposed to cigarette smoke are more likely to get SIDS. Preterm infants are more likely. And the other risk factor they talk about this is, and I love this, those with intrauterine growth restriction, because they're more likely to have a higher sympathetic tone. Okay? We're talking about the biomechanics, okay, of mom's pelvis and low back causing intrauterine growth restriction. Now, if you go talk to people like Dr. Jeannie Ohm, right, or the International Chiropractic Pediatric Association, chiropractor Webster's technique does not deal with intrauterine constraint. That's the practice of obstetrics, right? However, what we do is we do look at the biomechanics and the nervous system activity of the pelvis, which can relate to distortions in places like the uterus just because of the way the ligaments are attached, but that's neither here nor there. But what they're looking at is the structure of mom, right? The structure of this place where baby grows into, which is what chiropractors work with, is the structure of the low back and the pelvis, is related to improper structure is related in mom is related to improper function in baby, a higher sympathetic tone. Basically, this child is stuck in fight or flight. And when they're stuck in fight or flight, the survival mechanisms do not adequately work. If they're in fight or flight, they cannot be in rest or digest. Let me say that. The structure of mom relates to the function of baby. This is not chiropractic research. This is from the Journal of Clinical Autonomic Research, basically backing up what we've been saying since 1895. Protective factors are things like breastfeeding. The suckling, that motion, whether it's on mom or on a pacifier dummy, they bring all that in, is also a protective effect. Children who are breastfed are less likely to develop SIDS. Now, if we even look at the alignment of the atlas and anecdotally how many times we've seen children with difficulty breastfeeding doing better latching, being able to more evenly feed from breast to breast, it's just so crucial, right? It's just such a crucial part of care for baby, such a crucial part of the prenatal care for mom. Applying all this to SIDS, the way that they're finding all this is by looking at heart rate variability research. There's tons of research on chiropractic and heart rate variability. So this is what I would like to call it. This is what I like to call a bridge article, and that it's not a chiropractic specific article. We're looking at it and we're saying, well, we know chiropractic improves these factors like heart rate variability, the breastfeeding, right? The structure of mom's pelvis. And we know that these issues relate to these problems. So if this is related to this and we can improve this, well, then hopefully the outcome here can improve, right? And that is what I would like to call a bridge article. That for me is super powerful. I absolutely love that article. Go ahead and check that out. That's called Cardiovascular Autonomic Dysfunction and Sudden Infant Death Syndrome. It's from Clinical Autonomic Research. Just go ahead and know that every baby you adjust, right, whether it's just because, mom is super crunchy and wants that, right, whether or not it's because you build the value in the immune system, whether it's because they come to you with reflux or colic or constipation or ear infections or plagiocephaly, whatever it is, you're literally changing the outcome of this child's life and their ability to actually not only thrive, but be alive if we look at something like sudden infant death syndrome. The next article we want to look at is evaluation of spine MRIs in athletes participating in the Rio de Janeiro 2016 games. I absolutely love this. In 2016, researchers looked at all the MRIs of any athletes that participated. They had about 100 different MRIs from those athletes, and they found that 50% of our Olympians 52% of our Olympians, 52% of the athletes in the Rio de Janeiro games in 2016 had moderate to severe spinal degeneration stemming from consistent with chronic spine pathology. 52% with moderate to severe spinal degeneration. The highest rates were in athletes who had repetitive twisting or contortion type sports. The highest were diving, judo, and weightlifting. Athletes over 30 had the highest rates. Now, something that I love, I'm going to pull this out right from the article, is they talked about, well, how are these people still participating? How are they still functioning at a high level, at 100% of like a high level, at the highest level, which is the Olympics, with this almost like in any other population could be a crippling level of spinal degeneration. And just a little quote from them. What they said was that a previous study found that athletes with low back pain perceive less impairment compared with non-athletes. Perhaps elite athletes have different coping mechanisms for pain to endure the demands of elite competition, where they place their body at risk for acute or overuse injury. Essentially, what they're saying is something we talk about all the time, which pain isn't necessarily, the problem in itself. Pain is the perception of nociception. It's the brain's interpretation of information that reaches it. And these athletes, their brain does not interpret that the same way that yours or ours would. They do not interpret it as pain. They just have a different perception of that. So obviously not all of us in our practice are serving Olympic athletes. So why the heck is the fact that 52% of Olympic athletes having moderate to severe degeneration, why is it actually something important with us? I anecdotally, whenever I have somebody who's 30 to 35 years old who comes into my practice, who's recently developed a low back pain or sciatica, especially if they have a reflux or irregular absent painful menstrual cycles over the years previous, if they're coming in that 35 to 30 to 35 range, one of the first questions that I always ask is, what sport was it? Was it gymnastics? Were you a gymnast? Were you a diver? Were you an equestrian? Right? Which one is it? Because those repetitive or dancer, gymnast, dancer, or equestrian, those repetitive contortional movements over and over and over, causing that spondylolisthesis, is something that we see in our practice every day. The fact that they bent over to pick up their washcloth is not the reason that this issue has developed. It's the fact that they've been doing this for years and years and years and years and years. So it's not a come in, get a quick crack, and feel better, right? We're going to be doing years and years and years and years of trauma. And knowing that is hugely important. But more importantly, it's not the 30-year-old that comes into your practice with sciatica. More importantly is the kid, the gymnast, who's perfectly healthy right now. Mom, she's perfectly healthy. But we know that over years and years and years and years of being an athlete, every adjustment that they receive is going to be preventing these issues years and years and years down the line. So while we might not see that today, it's absolutely crucial to get these kids checked, get these kids adjusted, because the data is there. Without doing anything about this, it's going to be severe spinal degeneration, right? That includes cord compression, that includes neuroforaminal incompression, that includes disc herniations, that includes all that, moderate to severe. All right. Last thing that I wanted to look at was the cervicogenic headaches. This is called Dose Response and Efficacy of Spinal Manipulation for Care of Cervicogenic Headache, a dual center randomized control trial. Now, I both love and hate this paper so much at the same time. It's by a group of chiropractors, and they sought to find the ideal dose-response relationship between spinal manipulative therapy, excuse me while I vomit, and headaches. This is all chiropractors writing this. Some have PhDs, they all have DCs, and they talk about SMT, or spinal manipulative therapy, which we geek out about. I mean, a lot of even the principled or neurological chiropractors out there who don't just look at pain and headaches, but everything, right? Brain control. They're still using things like SMT, which really just pisses me off. And the reason that it bothers me so much is because we're not the only ones who can do it, right? We are chiropractors who are publishing research for physical therapy, because feeling for joint fixation, there's no mention of the nervous system activity here. It's just they palpated from the occiput down to T3, found out where it was stuck, and moved it. That's all they're doing. Anyone can do that. MD can do that. Physical therapist can do that. OT can do that. They're not analyzing for subluxation and correcting it. But that's my soapbox for this. Let's actually look what the data says, because the data's pretty good. Okay. So whether or not you're flying sevening or not, you can still use it. So basically what they looked at 256 adults with chronic cervicogenic headache. They applied spinal manipulative therapy to all of the areas of joint dysfunction, basically where the patient either said ow or they felt it stuck, and they used high velocity, low amplitude force to break up the fixation. And what they did was they had over 6 weeks, 4 different groups. They had people who came in who weren't adjusted at all. They had people who were adjusted once a week. They had people that were adjusted twice a week. And they had people who were adjusted 3 times a week. Now, something pretty cool here is that they didn't do a true sham adjustment. What they actually did was they did a light massage of the upper neck for individuals who weren't getting adjusted or weren't getting manipulated. Sorry, don't want to mix up those terms because they are important. But they they just did a light massage. So it's not a true sham. It's not a true control. So anything that we see as improvement isn't just over baseline. It's over someone who's still getting a touch type therapy, and their intent was to mimic touch. And what they found was that individuals who didn't get adjusted at all, who just got a light massage of the neck, actually saw an improvement by about 1/3 in the days in which they had cervicogenic headaches. But they did see significant improvement in individuals who do get adjusted. It improved all the way up to, for those who were seen 3 times a week or 18 visits over 6 weeks, they did see those improve by about half. Now that's over 6 weeks. Now the really cool thing here is that the dose response is a completely linear curve. There's no plateau that doesn't stop at the end of the 6 weeks. It's completely linear. Basically what they're saying is that it doesn't, the more the better. If there's fixation present, break it up, which is pretty cool. What's even cooler as well, is even in the paper, what they write about is the fact that this was over 6 weeks. There was no plateau in the end. So had we extended this for longer and continued it 3 times a week or 2 times a week or 1 time a week or whatever it is, had we continued, we probably still would have continued to see improvement, which is awesome. And it makes me feel so much better for when we come in and we recommend to somebody, hey, this is going to be an extended phase of care because we're going to be undoing years and years and years, and you're going to need to come 3 times a week at first. And when somebody says, hey, you know what, I'm not really sure I can make it 3, I think I just want to come 1. Right? Or my old chiropractor just saw me once a week or every other week or once a month just to get my back cracked, just to get me loosened up, and it would feel better. And it's just for the temporary relief instead of the true correction. And we look and we say, hey, that's not, you want to talk about evidence-based? That's not evidence-based. That's silly. You're wasting your money. Get here and get results. If you could come here a couple times a week and have your days of these debilitating headaches cut in half, would you do it? So anyway, that's just a little bit of certainty for you guys today. Know that your recommendations are on point, right? Know that you're doing good. What you're doing is supported by literature. Know that you can be preventing in young athletes things like spinal degeneration, which is present in 52% of our healthiest individuals, our Olympic athletes. Know that with every adjustment that you give every child, whether or not it's for a symptom, whether or not it's anything else, know that it's preventing or not only causing them to thrive, but helping them actually just stay alive. Right? That's everything we're going to go over for you guys today. I'm Dr. Anthony Pellegrino from ChiroEdge. If you guys want to go back, go ahead and look at the old live videos that we've done, the old research breakdowns to kind of get some certainty for you. You can do that by going to chiroedgemedia.com/live. If you want to, part of the intent of doing this live in the first place is the fact that for those who are subscribed to the ChiroEdge service, we're going to be using the handouts and the material that we make for these research breakdowns. I want them to actually be able to listen to it ahead of time or on the way into work on Monday morning, pull up a podcast, listen to the audio on the way home. One of our docs, Dr. John Morelli out of Las Vegas, was super excited because he was telling me the last research breakdown was perfect for him from when he left his house to arriving at his office, which was pretty cool. That's kind of the intent. So if you guys want to go ahead, you can find Chiropractic Research Breakdown in iTunes, or you can go on our website, which is chiroedgemedia.com/podcast. You can subscribe to it on SoundCloud, Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play, however else you consume audio material. Or if you wanted to actually receive those handouts, go ahead, jump on our homepage at chiroedgemedia.com. You can get a 2-week free trial right on there. Dr. Anthony Pellegrino from ChiroEdge. Thank you guys so much for tuning into the Chiropractic Research Breakdown, and I will see you all next week.